July 13, 1943, 2:40 a.m. outside Gela, Sicily. The air still smells of cordite and seawater. Engines idle low in the darkness, hundreds of them, American trucks, half-tracks, Shermans, all waiting behind olive groves and shattered stone walls. Somewhere to the north, artillery thumps like a distant heartbeat. The invasion is barely 48 hours old, and already Sicily feels like it's burning. A lantern flickers. General George S. Patton stands beside a command jeep, ivory-handled pistols heavy at his hips, helmet pulled low. His eyes are fixed on a map spread across the hood. The paper is creased, smudged with dirt and sweat. Palermo, 100 miles away. Mountain roads, narrow passes, enemy strongpoints, broken bridges. Most Allied planners believe it will take weeks. Patton believes it will take days. Behind him, a British liaison officer clears his throat. "Sir," the man says carefully, accent clipped and restrained, "the timetable you've submitted, it's considered optimistic." Optimistic? Patton doesn't look up. He taps the map once with a gloved finger. "This army," he says, voice low and sharp, "is going to Palermo, and it's going now." The officer hesitates. Others had used different words earlier that evening. Reckless. Impossible. Showmanship. Some had even smiled. 2 days earlier, Allied forces had stormed ashore across Sicily in Operation Husky, the largest amphibious invasion yet attempted. British General Bernard Montgomery's 8th Army was driving up the eastern coast toward Messina. Patton's U.S. 7th Army was meant to protect Montgomery's flank. Protect. Not race. Not capture cities. Certainly not challenge British operational planning. But Patton had looked at the terrain, the enemy dispositions, and the chaos spreading through Italian coastal defenses, and he saw opportunity. Where others saw disorder, Patton saw speed. Where others saw caution, Patton smelled momentum. In Allied headquarters, maps were pinned neatly, lines drawn carefully, timetables written conservatively. Patton hated timetables, especially ones written by men who wouldn't be riding in the trucks. When his staff presented the plan, a rapid thrust northwest toward Palermo, the reaction was immediate. British officers leaned back in their chairs. One reportedly chuckled. Another quietly muttered, "Americans and their theatrics." Palermo, they said, was a political target, not a military one. The roads were too narrow, the terrain too hostile. German rearguards would delay them easily. Even Montgomery himself dismissed the idea. Patton was not offended. He was energized. Now, in the early hours of July 13th, Patton climbs into his jeep. "Move out," he says. And the 7th Army begins to roll. At first light, Sicily reveals itself in brutal clarity. Dusk coats everything: faces, rifles, engines, lungs. The sun rises fast and merciless, turning steel hot to the touch before noon. Trucks grind uphill in low gear, overheated radiators steaming. Infantrymen cling to the sides, teeth rattling as the convoy snakes through mountain roads barely wider than the vehicles themselves. There are no neat columns. This is movement by instinct. Patton has ordered speed above all else. Units leapfrog without waiting for perfect coordination. If a bridge is blown, engineers throw planks across ravines. If a road forks, commanders choose the one that looks faster. Radio traffic crackles nonstop. German resistance appears suddenly. A machine gun nest here, a sniper there, then vanishes just as quickly. The enemy isn't holding ground. They're retreating. Italian units surrender by the hundreds, stepping from doorways with hands raised, stunned by how fast the Americans are coming. One U.S. officer writes later, "It felt like we were chasing the war itself." At division headquarters, Patton refuses to slow down. When a staff officer warns him that supply lines are stretching dangerously thin, Patton snaps back. Then stretch them faster. Fuel trucks drive without headlights at night. Drivers fall asleep at the wheel and are shaken awake by sergeants banging on doors. Maps become suggestions, not rules. The entire army begins to move on nerve. And somewhere far behind the front, British headquarters continues to believe the Americans are exaggerating their progress. After all, no one moves that fast in Sicily. On July 15th, reports begin arriving. Confusing ones. American patrols spotted far west of expected positions. Radio intercepts suggesting U.S. armor near towns the planners hadn't even marked as threatened. British intelligence officers frown at the maps. Must be reconnaissance elements, someone says. Forward scouts. Because the alternative makes no sense. Yet hour by hour, the reports keep coming. And the distances keep shrinking. Patton, meanwhile, pushes harder. When one unit pauses to consolidate after contact with German troops, Patton storms forward in his command car, dust billowing behind him. "What are you waiting for?" he demands. "The enemy, sir," the colonel replies. Patton points down the road. "Then chase him." The order spreads like electricity. No pauses, no breathing room. The army surges again. By July 16th, something shifts. German rear guards begin collapsing faster than expected. Intersections fall before demolition charges can be set. Supply dumps are captured intact. Prisoners admit they were told the Americans wouldn't reach this far for weeks. Weeks. Patton reads the captured documents and smiles. That night, under a canvas tent lit by a single bulb, he studies the timetable again. He takes a pencil and quietly crosses out the arrival date. He writes a new one. 2 days earlier. Far away, British liaison officers gather around a table, reviewing the latest situation update. One man stops reading. He reads it again, then slowly looks up. "According to this," he says, choosing his words carefully, "Patton's lead elements are less than 40 miles from Palermo." The room goes silent. Someone laughs nervously. That can't be right. But no one corrects him. Because the next report has already arrived. And this one is closer. Much closer. Outside Palermo, German officers are burning papers. Inside Allied headquarters, disbelief is beginning to curdle into something else. A realization. Because if Patton is where these reports say he is, then the timetable they mocked is about to collapse entirely. And the city of Palermo, the prize no one expected, is about to fall into American hands. 2 days early, the road into western Sicily bends like a scar. It climbs sharply through rock cuts and drops without warning into valleys, where villages cling to the hillsides like they're afraid of falling. For German commanders retreating toward Palermo, it is supposed to be defensible terrain, perfect for delay, perfect for buying time. But by the morning of July 17, 1943, something has gone terribly wrong. American vehicles are already appearing where no one expected them. A German signals officer near the town of Corleone stares at his field telephone in disbelief as reports stack on his desk. U.S. armored cars, motorized infantry, artillery moving at speed. Too fast. Far too fast. He sends a message up the chain. The reply comes back short and furious. "Impossible, hold your position." Minutes later, his position is overrun. Patton's advance has transformed into something closer to a pursuit than a battle. The 7th Army is no longer fighting set-piece engagements. It's outrunning German planning. Units advance through the night, headlights taped, engines coughing, men gripping rifles with dust-cracked hands. There is no dramatic trumpet call. Just movement. Relentless movement. Patton drives constantly, sometimes covering over 100 miles a day in his command car. His boots are coated white with dust. His voice grows hoarse from shouting orders over engines. When officers suggest halting to reorganize, he refuses. "You reorganize on the move," he snaps. The doctrine is dangerous, but it works. German commanders, expecting cautious American advances, are caught mid-withdrawal. Rear guards are bypassed entirely. Artillery units abandon guns because horses cannot move fast enough. In several towns, German officers arrive to prepare defenses, only to find American infantry already there. One Wehrmacht major reportedly says, "They are everywhere and nowhere at once." In Palermo, the atmosphere shifts from confidence to unease. The city is the administrative heart of western Sicily, docks, warehouses, headquarters buildings packed with files. It is not supposed to be threatened yet. Italian officials reassure themselves. The Americans are busy supporting the British. That is the plan. But on the evening of July 18th, the reassuring illusion fractures. Civilian trains heading west begin arriving packed with refugees. They bring stories of columns that never stop, of tanks appearing at dawn, of Americans waving people off the roads without firing a shot. The rumors all share one detail. They are moving fast. At German command headquarters inside Palermo, General Ferdinand von Hube receives updated situation maps. He stares at them in silence. The arrows are wrong. They are all wrong. American arrows are not where they should be. They are cutting across terrain considered impassable for a mechanized army. Von Hube realizes something chilling. This is not an advance. It's a race. And he is losing. Back with Patton, the pace intensifies. He orders the 2nd Armored Division and elements of the 3rd Infantry to drive through the night toward the city. Military police are placed at intersections to wave units forward without stopping. Even meals become optional. Men eat while riding. Sleep becomes something taken in minutes, not hours. When a unit commander radios that his men are exhausted, Patton's response is immediate. "So are the Germans," he replies. "Now go get there first." There is method behind the fury. Patton understands psychology, of enemies and allies alike. If he reaches Palermo first, he doesn't just seize a port. He seizes the narrative. He proves the Americans can maneuver faster than the British believed possible. And he forces the entire campaign to pivot. On the afternoon of July 21st, reconnaissance elements reach the outskirts of Palermo. They expect resistance. They find confusion. German anti-aircraft crews are redeploying. Italian coastal batteries have no clear orders. Command vehicles flee toward Messina. When the first American armored cars crest a rise overlooking the harbor, sailors can be seen abandoning ships. The city is unraveling. At 6:00 p.m., a German officer arrives under a white flag. Negotiations are brief. At 6:30 p.m., Palermo surrenders. Intact. Port facilities untouched. Warehouses full. Thousands of Axis troops lay down their arms. The Americans stare in disbelief. They've done it. 2 days ahead of Patton's already aggressive schedule. Nearly a week ahead of Allied expectations. That evening, Patton enters the city in his jeep. Crowds line the streets, some cheering, some silent, all stunned by how suddenly the war has arrived. Church bells ring. White flags hang from balconies. Patton removes his helmet. For a moment, he allows himself a smile. Then he turns to his chief of staff. "Send the message," he says. The message is short. Palermo secured. When it reaches Allied headquarters, The reaction is immediate and awkward. British officers reread the signal twice, then a third time. Someone mutters, "That's not possible." But the timestamp is undeniable. The Americans have arrived. Early, very early. And now a new problem emerges, one no one planned for. Because Patton is no longer protecting the British flank. He is ahead of it. And what he chooses to do next will threaten to fracture Allied unity itself. Palermo falls too cleanly. That is the first problem. The docks are intact, fuel stores untouched, roads usable, communication lines still humming beneath the city like nerves that haven't yet realized the body is wounded. This is not how conquered cities usually look. And because of that, the victory echoes far beyond Sicily. Within hours, the port is receiving Allied ships. Supplies that were meant to trickle slowly through beachheads now pour directly into Patton's hands. His army refuels, resupplies, and rests briefly. Very briefly. At Allied headquarters, the mood is anything but celebratory. Maps are unrolled again. New lines drawn. And then erased. Because no one expected the Americans to be here already. British officers speak in low voices. Montgomery's staff exchanges tight looks. The original campaign design assumed a single dominant thrust up the eastern coast. Now there are two. And one of them is moving faster than anyone intended. General Harold Alexander, overall ground commander of Allied forces, sends a carefully worded message to Patton. Congratulatory. Measured. Then comes the instruction. Patton is to halt further independent advances. He is to focus on securing western Sicily. The implication is clear. Enough glory. Patton reads the message silently. Then he folds it, places it on the table, and says nothing. Those nearby know the signs. When Patton grows quiet, he is not agreeing. He is calculating. Inside his headquarters that night, Patton studies the map again. Messina, the gateway off the island. If German forces escape through it, Sicily becomes a victory on paper, not in substance. Montgomery is driving north along the coast. Slowly, methodically, Patton sees something else. A race. Not against the Germans. Against time. Against hesitation. Against Allied caution. He turns to his operations officer. "How fast can we move east?" he asks. The officer hesitates. "Sir, we haven't been ordered." Patton cuts him off. "I didn't ask about orders." A pause. "If we go now," the officer says carefully, "we might reach Messina before the British." Patton nods once. "That's exactly what I intend." Orders go out under the language of reconnaissance in force. In practice, it is another full-throttle drive. American columns roll eastward along Sicily's northern coast, a narrow ribbon of road squeezed between mountains and sea. German artillery fires from heights above. Bridges are blown ahead of them. It doesn't stop the advance. Engineers rebuild crossings under fire. Infantry climbs slopes considered unclimbable. Naval guns offshore begin supporting the push. Patton is everywhere, appearing at roadblocks, shouting encouragement, threatening delay with court-martial. Men curse him and follow him anyway, because somehow, impossibly, it keeps working. British headquarters begins receiving unsettling updates. American patrols advancing parallel to Montgomery's axis. American flags appearing in towns the 8th Army expected to take. The tone of messages shifts. From surprise to irritation, then to concern. This is no longer coordination. It feels like competition. Montgomery is furious. He believes Patton is disobeying operational intent, stealing objectives, undermining unity. Staff officers draft protest cables. But each protest arrives too late. The Americans are already there. Again and again. On the German side, the situation grows desperate. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring understands the danger immediately. If the Allies converge too quickly on Messina, tens of thousands of German troops could be trapped. He orders a massive evacuation across the Strait of Messina day and night, under constant Allied air attack. German engineers turn the narrow crossing into a conveyor belt of survival. While Patton and Montgomery argue through headquarters channels, German soldiers are escaping by the thousands. Patton knows it, and it infuriates him. "Every hour we wait," he tells his staff, "is another German division getting away." The urgency sharpens. The race accelerates. On August 16, 1943, American patrols reach the outskirts of Messina. The city is shattered. Smoke hangs low over the harbor. The docks are wrecked, not by Allied bombs, but by Germans destroying what they cannot carry with them. Patton enters the city shortly after. He is furious. The enemy has slipped away. Yet when news breaks that American forces have entered Messina before the British, reactions ripple through the Allied command. The press takes notice. Headlines follow. Suddenly, Patton is no longer merely a subordinate commander. He is a figure, a symbol, a problem. In London, officials read reports with raised eyebrows. In Washington, generals smile quietly. In British mess halls, the mood darkens. The Americans were not supposed to do this. They were supposed to learn, to follow, to mature slowly. Instead, in the dust and heat of Sicily, they have demonstrated something unsettling. They can move fast. They can improvise. And they can win races no one admitted were happening. Yet beneath the triumph lies tension, raw and unresolved. Because Patton's victory has come at a cost not measured in casualties or terrain. It has shaken trust. The alliance holds, but now with cracks. And as the war moves toward mainland Europe, those cracks will matter. Because one day soon, Patton will be given a far larger army, a far greater battlefield. And when that happens, the laughter that once followed his timetables will be remembered. Especially by those who laughed first. The guns in Sicily fall quiet. Not all at once, but gradually, unevenly, like a storm drifting out to sea. Smoke thins, roads empty, the island exhales. For the first time in weeks, men sleep without boots on. Yet inside Allied headquarters, the tension does not fade. It hardens. Because victories are supposed to simplify command. This one has complicated everything. In the days after Messina, reports circulate through Allied command channels, after-action summaries, operational reviews, personal letters written late at night. Again and again, the same uncomfortable conclusion appears between the lines. Patton's army moved faster than anyone believed possible. Faster than doctrine. Faster than planning. Faster than the assumptions that underpinned the entire campaign. British officers reread the original timetables, the ones they had laughed at. They compare them to arrival logs, fuel records, unit positions. The numbers do not bend. They accuse. At a closed-door meeting, one British staff officer finally says what many are thinking. "If this is how the Americans fight now," he mutters, "what will they be like next year?" No one answers. Because they already know. Patton, meanwhile, senses the shift. Praise reaches him, but it arrives filtered, congratulatory language wrapped around caution. He is promoted in headlines, restrained in private. Senior commanders commend his aggressiveness, then quietly remind him of discipline, of coalition unity, of restraint. Patton bristles. To him, restraint is what lets enemies escape. Yet he understands something now that he did not before Sicily. Speed wins battles, but speed frightens allies. A British liaison officer, the same man who once questioned Patton's timetable, requests a private conversation. They stand outside headquarters as the Sicilian wind carries dust across the courtyard. "I owe you an apology, General," the officer says stiffly. Patton studies him. "For what?" "For doubting your estimate." Patton considers this, then replies, "You didn't doubt the estimate, you doubted the army." The officer doesn't argue, because he can no longer. The Sicily campaign becomes a case study almost immediately. Staff colleges dissect it. Commanders debate it. Some praise Patton's tempo as revolutionary. Others warn it is unsustainable, too risky, too dependent on personality. But the war is changing. Mechanized armies are growing larger. Air power is tightening its grip. And somewhere inside Allied doctrine, a seed has been planted. Speed is not recklessness. Speed is a weapon. Months later, as plans begin forming for the invasion of France, Patton's name keeps appearing, sometimes written, sometimes spoken only in passing. Not because he is loved, because he is feared, even by his own side. German intelligence certainly fears him, so much so that they will soon build entire fantasies around his presence. Fake armies, inflatable tanks, ghost divisions, all because of what he did in Sicily, because he proved something fundamental. If Patton is coming, you must assume he will arrive early. Back in Britain, one officer writes in his journal, "We laughed at his timetable. That was our mistake. Timetables are not predictions, they are declarations." It is a quiet admission, but a profound one, because the laughter never returns. Not for Patton. Not when his name appears on a map. Not when his units are reported on the move. There is only calculation now. Concern. And respect edged with unease. Years later, after the war, when veterans speak of Sicily, they do not talk first about beaches or battles. They talk about motion, about trucks that never stopped, about orders that came at midnight and were executed by dawn, about the feeling that if you paused, even for a moment, the war itself would leave you behind. That was Patton's true victory. Not Palermo, not Messina, but the moment Allied commanders realized something irreversible. The Americans were no longer learning how to fight a modern war. They were defining how fast it would be fought. And the next time a timetable was passed across a table, whether in Normandy, France, or deep inside Germany, no one laughed.